So we have all seen examples of amazing leaders who are also fantastic and compelling public speakers.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Yes, we can. Yes, we did.
And we've all seen other examples of people who, shall we say, have some room for improvement.
The total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
Are you claiming that the Eisenhower administration was responsible for the building of these schools, or is it the local school districts that provide for them?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, your question brings out a point that I'm very glad to make. Too often, in appraising whether we are moving ahead or not, we think only of what the federal government is doing.
What makes the difference between these folks is often a combination of both the substance and the style. So the substance is the content of what they are saying, and the style is the how they are saying it. Today I'm going to give you 4 tips to help you be on your way to being an effective and persuasive public speaking rock star. I'm Bob Bordone. I'm a senior fellow at Harvard Law School and former member of the Harvard Law School faculty, where I taught for 21 years. I also spend a substantial amount of my time delivering keynotes to major conferences that focus on effective communication, persuasion, and influence. As we get started, share in the comments some of the biggest challenges you've faced as a public speaker when trying to persuade an audience. Okay, so let's start with tip number 1. Less is more. Whenever you are preparing a public speech, it's actually helpful to have a relatively small number of big message units. So I call these BMUs. You want to limit the BMUs for a number of reasons. First of all, people just get overwhelmed. Secondly, actually repetition in a talk is a good thing. And thirdly, you want to make sure that you yourself are being precise and sharp. Now I have to tell you, this lesson that I'm giving you is an incredibly hard one for me. In fact, this video has 4 tips, but my original outline actually had 15 tips.
That's a lot.
Then I realized I would not be modeling very well if I'm teaching public speaking and trying to do it in 15 tips in a small point. So you really want to model this by keeping it simple and keeping it short. Less is pretty much always more when it comes to public speaking. Second tip, use stories. Examples and stories are both helpful in public speaking, but stories are typically better. A story tends to bring the listener in, it provokes their imagination, it creates an image, and that's what you want to do. They're going to remember that more than any didactic point. You know, I've had the great privilege of training a bunch of professors at Harvard Law School who later went to become communication, negotiation, and influence lecturers. And many times they will say to me, "Oh, hey, Bob, you know, would you mind if I kind of used your lecture to get started?" And I love to share, so I'm always ready to say yes. My one big piece of advice to them is make the story your own. It is always better to own your own stories. If you're telling Bob's story, it's just hard to own that. So pick something from your personal experience, pick something from even the experience of someone in your ambit. That kind of a story is just going to resonate. And it really leads to the third point, which is being authentic. So Paul Ekman has done an enormous amount of research on lie detection. His research has shown that humans can often detect lies about facts 50% of the time.
Really?
Really?
But they can detect lies about emotions up to 80% of the time. What that means is when you're up there, if you're feeling nervous, if you're feeling kind of tense, if you're feeling like you just made a mistake, it's just better to own that, right? Use humor, be yourself, be scrappy, whatever it is that makes you you, that is going to shine forth. And if you're not that, it's just not going to land. You know, some years ago, I was working with a colleague, and He was trying really, really, really hard to have a certain kind of charismatic flair in the classroom. And at some point what I realized, and it was incredibly flattering to me, it was incredibly touching to me, but I think he was trying to be like me. Now let me be clear, I don't think I'm charismatic in the classroom, but I think I'm authentic in the classroom. And finally I just sat down with him and I said, hey, like, I think it's really cool that you're trying to be like me, but you know what I think would be much better? It would be to be like you. And I think if you can get out of your own head and be like you, that's going to work much, much better. So being real is something that people just really, really appreciate. Last important point is preparation and practice. I can't overemphasize this enough. Thinking about what are your BMUs, thinking about is it too much, thinking about what are the stories, right? Writing them out. That is going to make a really big difference when it's time for execution. Some years ago, I was selected by the graduating class at Harvard Law School to receive the teaching prize. And this is a very great honor, but what comes with it is the chance to address the class at graduation. So knowing that this would probably be my first, last, and only time to do this, I spent an enormous amount of time preparing. In fact, I wrote 23 versions of this speech. Yes, that is accurate, 23 versions.
Wow!
And then I went into a Harvard Law School classroom and would deliver this over and over. And I would bring in colleagues. I would ask them to pay attention to my timing and my cadence and whether a story landed, and if it did, why it landed, and if it didn't, what got lost. That work really paid off. So as you continue on your journey, becoming a more persuasive and compelling speaker, I encourage you to follow these 4 points. And so now an authentic and very real request for me. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, be sure to like this video and ring the bell. It's a great way for you to get more tips on how to be persuasive in any situation. And be sure to watch this next video with tips on how to improve your negotiation skills. I'm Bob Bordone, and thanks for watching. Okay, it's not difficult to keep watching. Click, click.